I'm pleased to see that the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, will be recommending the sale of e-cigarettes in the NHS in order to wean people off smoking. This is fantastic news. I used to smoke myself, but gave up the death sticks because, naturally, I didn't wish to be among the 64,000 Brits who die each year from smoking-related diseases. For a while I missed them terribly. My mornings felt incomplete without the head rush and the subsequent mental clarity from the first cigarette. I had made friends with other smokers, among whom small favours, the bumming of a fag, the sharing of a light, fostered a kind of solidarity. It was nice to know that I'd always have an excuse to duck out of a noisy pub. Even in winter there was something defiant and darkly comic about sucking on a neatly packed tube of carcinogens to stave off the freezing cold, a necessary act of masochism thanks to the smoking ban against which I railed. But, as I say, I didn't actually want to get lung cancer, brown teeth, shrunken testicles, and pockmarked skin. Once my lungs had started sounding in 3 tones, I threw my remaining ciggies in the bin, doused in water so that I couldn't renege. It must have been a few months later that I discovered vaping. After a cursory examination into their safety, I bought one of my own and haven't looked back. My favourite flavours are tobacco, coffee, and biscuit. I dare say that vape shops are the modern equivalent of tobacconists, except that the sheer range of paraphernalia would amaze the pipe smoker of yore. I frequently compare notes, so to speak, with other vaping friends, turning my nose up at their preferred flavours while coveting new models, the way I once coveted Yoda's lightsaber in the window of Forbidden Planet. At the moment, vaping is one of those odd technologies which have in fact become quite common, about 3.6 million people do it, while remaining poorly understood. In that respect, they're like birds. You see them everywhere, but when you get the chance to see one up close or hold one, it's as though you've never seen them before. I'm constantly told that they're dangerous, vapes that is, not birds. Or if not dangerous, then too little tried and tested to know any better, and thus not worth the risk. I suppose it's possible that in 5 or 10 years we'll find out they've been slowly killing their users all along. But an unknown risk is better than a known risk, namely the known risk of smoking. Only a moron could deny the dangers of smoking, dangers that were actually known about long before Big Tobacco was forced to admit it. At any rate, vaping is as much in the clear as any such habit could be. The Royal College of Physicians has deemed it 95% safer than smoking, and there are reasons to think that this is a conservative estimate. Vapers, moreover, are indistinguishable from non-smokers on most ill health indicators. E-liquids must pass rigorous toxicology tests. These would only be more rigorous under the purview of the NHS. The devices themselves are fitted with all sorts of safeguards against overheating, overcharging, leaking, and so on. In 2019, there was a big scare about their safety when 19 vapers in the US, mostly under age 30, died of collapsed lungs. Inevitably, there were calls to ban vaping outright, but one should examine the incentives at work. In this country, for instance, the most outspoken attacks on vaping come from a cosy little earner called nicotine replacement therapy, that is, patches and gum, which are bought by the NHS at great cost to the taxpayer. Never mind that they don't really work, for along comes a private, non-subsidised alternative that does work. 97% of vapers are former smokers, and Big Pharma closes its ranks and claims that vaping is basically the devil's work. Anyway, in the US, every one of the vaping-associated pulmonary injuries and deaths were attributed to black market e-liquids containing THC, which are much easier to obtain in the US than here. There are other differences. To quote Matt Ridley, in Britain, a manufacturer or importer of e-cigarettes must submit a notification to the authorities 6 months in advance of a product launch and is subject to strict product safety regulations, including toxicological testing of the ingredients and emissions, as well as rules ensuring tamper-proof and leak-proof packaging. Stimulants, colorings, and vitamin additives are tightly regulated. Few such regulations exist in the US. For many observers, this explains the higher injury rate. What's happening in the US is not happening here in Britain, nor is it happening in any other countries where vaping is common, says John Britton, director of the UK Centre for Tobacco and Alcohol Studies at Nottingham University. Given the relative safety of vaping, it's no exaggeration to say that any government which bans them is condemning potentially thousands of people to preventable deaths. If smoking kills, vaping saves. It is, to quote Matt Ridley again, The perfect example of a voluntary innovation derived from free enterprise that delivers better human health at no cost to the taxpayer and no inconvenience to society, and causes pleasure. I suspect this last fact, that vaping causes pleasure, is one reason so many people don't like it. A paradox of our society is that it's at once hedonistic and puritanical. I think this has very much to do with a class divide of sorts. Rich city dwellers won't think twice about snorting cocaine on a Saturday night and juicing on a Monday morning, while perhaps frowning on smokers who are of course more prevalent among the poor. Similarly, someone who knocks back 6 pints a day in the pub, something I heartily approve of, by the way, might frown on the vaper sitting on the bench next to them with a glass of wine. So it goes. We're very selective about which pleasures we deem moral and which immoral. But compared with cannabis, cocaine and alcohol, vaping is squeaky clean, and I wish it every success. Vapers of the world, unite!